We're awaiting for that conclusive outcome from this U.S. election. From your perspective, how is Singapore viewing it? What's the possible impact on U.S.-Singapore relations?
Very good morning to you, Linda. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think we look at this election from a longer-term perspective, and we look beyond the personalities. Now, let me explain why we say that. I think at this point in time, regardless of the outcome of the elections, I think Singapore and the rest of the region will be closely looking at the following set of factors. First, we know that this election has deeply divided the US electorate. The challenge for either one of the candidates will be how can they reunite the country, how can they unite the country and make sure that they adopt consistent and coherent policies going forward. The second challenge would be how can the US bring the COVID-19 situation under control so that economic activities can resume. So these are the more immediate challenges. But beyond the two immediate challenges, the more serious longer-term challenges are as follows. First, how can the US maintain its competitiveness? How can it embrace the talent from across the world to continue to propel its economy forward? And second, how does it help its own businesses and people adjust to the pressures of globalization and digitalization and not have a backlash against globalization and digitalization in the US? Otherwise, there will be a pushback against globalization and the world economic system may fracture or fragment because of that. But finally, one of the biggest challenge for the US going forward is how can it maintain its leadership in the world by mobilizing like-minded partners to work together to uphold and update the global economic and security order. So these are some of the immediate challenges and some of the longer-term challenges that are invariant regardless of who wins the elections.
So a lot is at stake for the world, for Singapore, Minister. In our last conversation, you talked about how Singapore's own recovery is contingent on how the rest of the world is recovering as well. Now we have a resurgence of the COVID cases in the US and the Europe, and we're seeing reimposition of some restrictions. How is that impacting Singapore's own trajectory when it comes to the economic recovery?
Well, we are closely connected to the rest of the world. And definitely the reimposition of lockdowns in Europe and elsewhere in the world will have an impact on the global economic recovery. And certainly there will be a knock-on impact on economies like Singapore. But let me just touch on how we intend to deal with this. Domestically, our first priority is to make sure that we open up safely and sustainably. Open up our economic activities, resume our economic activities in a sustainable and safe way. Now, that is fundamental. Now, having done that, our second priority is to make sure that we can reconnect with the rest of the world in terms of the air links and the sea links to make sure that we strengthen our connectivity to the rest of the world in this crisis. Now, once we have done that, we can get back to our primary focus that have started even beyond COVID, and that is to make sure that we continuously reinvent ourselves by making sure that we reallocate the factors of production from labor to capital and land and so forth to the new industries that are emerging and to seize those new opportunities.
Minister, do you see a U-shaped recovery, and when do you see a recovery for Singapore?
I think many people have used a lot of English letters to describe this, from V-shaped to U-shaped to L-shaped to W-shaped and K-shaped. I think what we see is that the recovery will be gradual and it will be uneven. It will be gradual because very much depends on what happens in the rest of the world, as you have just mentioned. Will there be further lockdowns? Will there be a repeat of the spike in cases across the different countries? So we expect the recovery to be uneven and gradual. And for the various sectors itself, some of the sectors will be permanently changed. So regardless of the pace of recovery, some industries will have to look at new business model, new markets. Whereas there are other industries like ICT, financial services, and professional services, they will continue to do well regardless of the COVID. On the other hand, sectors like mines industry, social entertainment, they will have to rework their business model in order to recover from the COVID-19 situation. So if you like, some people call this a K-shaped recovery, whereby some sectors will continue to do very well, while other sectors will need to reinvent themselves. And our job is to make sure that we establish conditions. Sorry.
Minister, what is the one thing that must change in a post-COVID world?
Oh, there are many things that will need to change in a COVID world, never mind a post-COVID world. I think some of the forces that we are talking about has already happened prior to the COVID world. For example, the risk of a fragmentation or bifurcation on the global economic system, the advent of new technologies that will change the method of productions, reshape the global supply chains. And from the COVID world, the nature of work and how people work remotely will also have a great impact on the future economic trajectory. So these are the factors that will shape the work and economic development in a COVID world and certainly in a post-COVID world.